All right, everyone, just to keep things moving along and make sure that we're sticking to some sort of schedule, I guess I'll get started. So my name is Will Horn. I am a senior in the Questrom School of Business at BU studying finance and information systems. And for my Keystone project and presentation for KHC, I took a look at these new types of corporate entities called benefit corporations as well as certified B corporations. And I wanted to examine sort of how they fit into the modern world and also into the business world moving forward. So a brief run through of sort of how I'm going to guide this conversation today. I'm going to start off talking sort of about why benefit corporations exist in sort of the underlying root causes in terms of ethics and also just looking in general at business ethics today in society. And then I'm going to give you a brief overview of B Corps and benefit corps and then sort of talk about some of my results, findings, and skepticism about them. So to start off, I want to walk through a brief timeline just about some notable corporate scandals since the early 2000s. This is by no means an exhaustive list. It's just a highlight of a few things. So, of course, starting off in 2001, there was Arthur Andersen, Enron, and WorldCom, where accounting fraud and accounting scandals led to the global demise of three massive institutions. Then if we go to 2008, I don't think I need to get into this too heavily. I think we all can understand the ethics and the implications, and all were cognizant of the financial crash that happened around the entire world from 2008, of which the effects are still being felt today. And then if you're looking forward, in 2010, there was the largest oil spill in U.S. history with BP. In 2016, just last year, Volkswagen was found to cheat on emissions tests with a lot of their vehicles, and Wells Fargo fraudulently opened up millions of accounts in their consumers' names. So really, the question that drove my research is what's going on, right? Businesses have existed for hundreds of years at this point. Capitalism has been a system for hundreds of years. How does this keep happening, right? How do people keep making these choices that seem like they're going to benefit them in the short term, but end up demolishing their entire company that they work for, and also degrade their own personal wealth as well as the public's wealth as well? So in one aspect, if you're looking at it in sort of black and white terms, it's really easy to look at the people that are making these decisions, looking at the executives and saying, they were just out to get everyone. But then if you take a second look at it, it's hard to understand why executives at Wells Fargo would encourage their employees to fraudulently open up millions of accounts in their consumers' names, right? So on the board behind me, I have different ethical blind spots that many researchers have identified that take and explain why normal people, ethical, good people, you, me, any random person could walk into a place of business tomorrow and could make what would otherwise be seen as an unethical choice. And so I won't go through all of them in great detail, but these are essentially just explanations for how in a situation we could make an unethical choice. And just for a brief explanation, I'll take the first one, ill-conceived goals. Sears Automotive, they started a new branch where people could bring in their cars, get their cars fixed. Sears put in financial incentives for their mechanics to fix as many parts on the car as possible. And they were hoping that would increase the amount of cars that were served. And so the revenue of this branch skyrocketed. It went really well. Everyone thought that all these cars were being fixed. Everything was going really well. What ended up happening through an independent investigation was mechanics were overcharging and talking about repairs being made on these cars that didn't actually need to be made. Right? So there was this goal that they had, this financial incentive that caused mechanics systematically to overcharge and choose to behave in what would otherwise be considered an unethical fashion. So one huge thing that can be seen sort of when you're looking at any sort of unethical or even just poor choice that's made in business is this short-term focus on short-term profitability. If you're in a public company, quarterly earnings with Wall Street are what drive your company. If you look at the tenure of any CEO of a Fortune 500 company, it's about 5 to 6 years at this point. So things are very narrow and very short term when you're talking about boosting profits and boosting profitability, which that narrow focus can cause people to make poor decisions. Now behind me, I have core tenets of the mission and value statement of a company called Patagonia. Patagonia makes apparel that everyone in this room is probably familiar with. They make mountain climbing apparel, and everything of theirs is very high quality, and that's very important to them. And one thing I want to point out is that in all 6 of these boxes, profit is never mentioned once. Money is never mentioned a single time. They even go so far as to say in their mission and value statement, while we recognize that profit is important for the health and longevity of this company, growth and expansion are values not basic to this corporation. Their goal is not to grow and take over the world and to generate as much profit as possible. Their goal is to be a good company that's healthy for themselves, their employees, and for the communities around them. And so Patagonia is a good example of a company that you can associate with being a B corporation and also a social benefit corporation. So let me give you a brief overview of what these two things are. A social benefit corporation is a distinct legal entity. They provide their management with the ability to ingrain a social mission into the foundational documents and foundation of the company so that when they're making decisions, they can make decisions at the sake of profits for that social mission. A certified B corporation is not a legal distinction. Any company can become a certified B corporation. Think of B certification as a building getting LEED certified. It's a stamp of approval that a third-party B lab, a nonprofit, goes in, looks at all of your different business operations, and says you are holding yourself to the highest standards of accountability, transparency, sustainability, and treatment of your employees. So any company can apply to be B certified. And it is through that certification process that the entire company overall is stamped as being a good company that's sustainable and good for the long term. So here are just some brief examples of different companies that fall into different categories. For my research, I just wanted to point out that I was able to interview companies Beta Bionics, which is actually a company that was started by a BU professor, and Keen Advisors, which is also located in Boston, as well as a company called Reformation based out in Los Angeles. And on this side, these are exclusively B certified companies. In the middle are companies that are both B certified and social benefit corporations. And on the right are examples of companies that are just the legal entities benefit corporations. So it's much more rare to just be a benefit corporation without being both a benefit corporation and B certified. They tend to go hand in hand. And so now what I'd like to talk to you about is sort of the main value that I found through my research related to these companies. So on one hand, when you're talking about certified B corporations, the nonprofit B Lab organizes various events and organizes various resources that are available to B certified companies that wouldn't otherwise be available to you or me just opening up our own C Corp or LLC or whatever it might be. It's an easy signal to consumers as well as investors about the type of company that you are and the type of company that you strive to be. And both of these things are a value that B Lab is providing for B certified companies that doesn't otherwise exist. On the other hand, when you're looking at social benefit corporations, the main value that comes from that is really that legal protection. It's the protection to go to your shareholders and say, we didn't make as much money this year because we invested in sustainable activities. We didn't make as much money this quarter because we spent more on healthcare for our employees. And if you have that legal protection, you're less worried about a shareholder taking legal action against you, right? Because their main goal is to make money off of their venture. And so you're less worried about that happening. And the investors that are invested in your company know ahead of time that this is a possibility. And it's part of the value that they're seeking is that social benefit that you're bringing to society around you. Some of the shared benefits that exist in the overall benefit community include access to capital. There are new types of venture funds and investment groups being set up that are looking to invest specifically in socially responsible companies. There is, of course, the signaling effect to investors as well as consumers, but also to employees. When you're attracting talent, you're attracting people that are passionate about working for a socially responsible and ethical company. And the biggest piece of value that I found through my research and that was communicated to me throughout interviews that I had with these companies was that there's a community growing of benefit corporations and in the benefit world that creates a massive piece of value that the people that started these companies and started these ventures did not expect to happen. B Corps tend to do business with B Corps. Benefit corporations tend to do business with benefit corporations. And being a part of that community provides various benefits, just being a part of that insulated group for their sustainable value moving into the future. So some skepticism exists, of course, some fair skepticism, in terms of the legal structure of the social benefit corporation. Right now, any board of directors could adopt the same exact tenets that a benefit corporation has. The standards for B certification are set by a third-party B lab, so it isn't like it's all of society saying this is what we want companies how we want companies to behave. It is specifically just this nonprofit organization. And there's also the fact that there are plenty of ethical companies out there already. I interviewed traditional corporations as well as a part of my research, and there are plenty of companies out there that behave ethically and morally and in a socially responsible manner. However, the main response, I have responses listed here, but the main response to this skepticism would be that it isn't necessarily about creating the perfect ethical company. Becoming a social benefit corporation or getting your B certification is about encouraging a culture within your company and encouraging a broader culture within society to take a longer term, more sustainable view into the future that incorporates different stakeholders than just the shareholders of your company. So it isn't the perfect fix. It isn't the be-all, end-all. B certification and social benefit corporations are probably just one piece of a net of solutions that are going to need to take place over the next few years if corporate America wants to continue to be successful within society and wants to change the overall somewhat negative perception that has existed before the financial crash, and that especially, I think we can all understand and feel in this room, persists a bit into today. So as society moves forward, as corporate America wants to continue to be a part of that society, it's important to understand and recognize that adopting these values are important, and that adopting these values not only are important just for the public benefit, but will also help to create sustained competitive advantages and sustained benefits for these companies themselves. Thank you very much all for listening. I'm open to any questions you might have. Professor Delheim.
So I think this was great and really fascinating, well done, and it's something that I'm personally very interested in. So one of the questions I have for you is whether you're able to identify sectors in which notions of social benefit are more important. Because if you look at some of the companies in England and America, and Marks and Spencer's, Cadbury's, Roundtree's, a few American equivalents. Not only were they originally very strong family companies with a particular religious orientation, but there was also something else involved. They were in consumer goods, and they actually used the social benefits that they provided to their workers and to the surrounding community as part of what we now call brand. Right. So, and the other traditional way of looking at it is that capital goods companies, which sell commodities and do not deal with the consumers, are less likely to be involved in this. Sure. Do you see any validity to this?
So on the one hand, that is something that I was made sure to delve into within my research, was that it's really easy for a company to adopt all these things if they're a consumer-facing company, and they're able to incorporate it into their marketing and their branding. So it's important when you're looking at the B certification process, as well as setting up as a social benefit corporation. One, if you're changing the foundational documents of your company to incorporate a social mission into it, it becomes clear that that is something that's intrinsic and inherent to that company and something they care about. And the B certification process really relies on the third-party B Lab to really make sure that the motivations of those companies are intrinsic to them, and that they aren't just for show. Sort of as you were touching upon. And then on the other part of your question, in terms of just consumer-facing versus other types of companies, so broadly, I think you could say that there are probably more companies that are B certified or are social benefit corporations that are consumer-facing. However, there are a growing number of B2B companies that are getting their B certification and are social benefit corporations. An example of this is Beta Bionics, one of the companies I interviewed. Their bank is a social benefit corporation, right? And so in that aspect, it becomes clear that that community is really where that value starts to take place, because benefit corporations look to do business with other ones, right? And so it gives you access to this already existing community that you might not otherwise have access to. And I was also able to interview an investment bank that's a social benefit corporation. So while there might not be as many right now, I think into the future you will see more and more different commodities and B2B type businesses adopt this model.
I said you interviewed companies that weren't B certified or SB companies, and you said that they had these ethical motivations as well. What were your merits for like making that judgment?
Yeah, sure. So the main one that I got to interview for this project was a company based out in Alston called Ediometry, and Ediometry makes patient monitoring systems, sort of like information systems for ICUs, specifically for pediatric hospitals. And so sort of foundational to whatever they're doing, and what was very clear to me throughout the interview, was everything they're doing is going toward protecting the lives of children and toward improving patient care for young children. And so while it's a startup, while it's a smaller company that doesn't necessarily have a codified mission and value statement, isn't quite at that stage yet, they made sure in all of their business dealings and all of their practices, whether it's the person on the other end that's buying their service or whether it's the research that goes into it, every single thing that they do is toward improving the lives of children and babies and infants around the world, right? So that was sort of a counterweight, just to show that it is very possible, and just to add color and show that it is very possible for any type of corporation to behave ethically.
So if they veered away from more profit-oriented type mission, then they would be considered as ethical corporation.
Right, and it isn't necessarily to say that just because you're a traditional company, you're more likely to be a bad company. The main takeaway from my research was that if you're a social benefit or a B certified, or you are orienting yourself in that way, it's just easier. It makes it that much easier and that much more possible, and helps protect against those blind spots that I mentioned in the beginning. Great. I think that's it. Thank you all so much.